Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, we're talking Red Raiders sports stock report. Compared to their peers in the Big 12, up or down, buying or selling. We're also getting to ball carriers and getting the Jones jumping once again in 2023. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Always great to be a part of your day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks for making us your first listen. Chris, great to be back with you, man, and back talking Red Raiders. We're going to get to a couple of different things as the show rolls on here related to football specifically. We'll talk running back production in 2023 as you've got some good stuff returning, but also some new faces going to be in the mix there as well. And also, kind of in a similar vein to something we talked about last week, we touched on a winning conference record, something you did for the first time in over a decade, but also something that was a great part of what you did last season, winning in the LBK. Jones Stadium was the site of success for the most part for Texas Tech. We remember that that one rough outing, but otherwise was good to you. Can you do it again at home in 2023? And all of that folds into the conversation we'll have to kick off the episode, Chris, which is an athletics department-wide kind of conversation. Because, you know, I've talked off the air about stock up, stock down, the trade report. What are we talking about when we're actually talking Red Raider sports right now? Because I think for some time you've known that you've had some great success and consistent success in some areas, maybe not some of the most visible, but you've really wanted to get some of those front-facing programs having some of that success. Well, got a little taste of it to a degree with your football program last year, so that certainly helps. But I'm curious, as we sit here in July, wrapping up the summer of 2023, how do you feel about where Texas Tech is department-wide compared to their peers?
Athletic department-wise is an interesting way to phrase that. I think, look, the academic year is over. You know, we know Big 12 Media Days are next week now that we're on the other side of July the 4th. And it's and you've already seen all the announcements about those 4 new members officially joining the league, which happened earlier this past week on July 1st when that became official. And so it's time to look ahead. But if we look back to last year, it's an interesting conversation to have, especially when you take stock in, because look, let's be honest, we spend most of our time talking football, hoops, and some baseball. And so when because that's what makes the money, or what drives most of the conversations and interest level, like on with fan bases and stuff. And so Texas Tech is an interesting conversation as it relates to other schools in the league. Like for example, let's take a look at the stock of, like, say, Oklahoma's department right now. They were 6-7 in football. They did not make the NCAA tournament. They kind of barely got into the baseball NCAA tournament. I mean, you assess that. I mean, we all talk about Oklahoma in certain ways. I know what they've done in the past, but the immediate snapshot, it's not very good. It's just not. I mean, let's look at West Virginia. Okay, they actually make it to the NCAA tournament in basketball. They had a pretty good year, kind of rebound a little bit, but look at their program right now as we look at it. Football up there is in bad shape. Neil Brown very much on the hot seat. I think baseball made some noise, but again, like you would definitely have an arrow pointing down with their athletic department, would you not? I mean, it's a no-brainer. Texas Tech's an interesting conversation because I think you see football, trending up, definitely arrow up. I think that's what a ton of people are interested in. I think there's nobody that's going to dispute that. You are on the field success. You've got a coach under contract that everybody loves. You've got $200+ million renovations rolling. You're recruiting at a high level. I mean, check. Give me the more of the boxes there that you need to fill in. But I think you're pointing up. Basketball, on the other hand, this was kind of the main thing in your department a few years ago, and this is you're selling out home games. You're not winning. I mean, you're not losing games at home, and then the wheels kind of come off. So that arrow is right, wrong, or indifferent here. That arrow is pointed down.
Yeah.
Now it's up to Grant McCaslin to kind of stabilize that and get it back to pointing in the right direction. But overall, the net would be, and again, baseball obviously went to a regional and all that stuff, and it wasn't Tim's best year, but this was a bad year for them, and they still were, well into the NCAA tournament, and I think that speaks to what kind of the great job that he's done. But I would say overall, your athletic department arrow is pointing up because of so much, with the football program and some of it not on the field. It's all the other stuff. I think you're whipping everybody with your NIL kind of thought process. I think you just have a lot of people rowing the right direction and in the same direction, which is key. And I think that's worth a lot because I think you're selling season tickets like crazy and all those things. So I don't know if you feel differently, but that's going to be my stance there.
No, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I really just feel like overall, it's hard to feel great about the big picture report if your football program is not in a fruitful state. And I know that's just one of several athletics programs, but it's the one that pays for all the others. So that's why it gets the attention that it does, and that's why it carries the importance that it does. And I think it's been interesting to kind of observe for a period of time here. I mean, Kirby Hocutt's been in Lubbock for a little while now, not a newbie by any stretch anymore. It's been interesting to observe so much success that you have had elsewhere outside of that football program during his tenure as Texas Tech's athletics director. I mean, there are so many other Olympic sports or spring sports or other things that have been in such great shape. I mean, for crying out loud, we don't have to tell you what Wes Kitley has done, but
golf,
soccer. I mean, you go on and on, right? And those don't get quite as much attention. And again, when you're talking athletics department, health, you want to make money, you want to fund the sports, so you need your football program to do that. Those others don't do that. But I've been interested to observe the highs that you've had, like with a men's basketball program or even your baseball program, that are a little bit more visible, a lot more visible. But still are not on that football level, Chris. And all along you're thinking, all right, gauging the job that Kirby Hocutt has done, I have thought all along has been pretty good. Like, how could you not say at minimum it's been good? I don't think there's anything bad about it. But you've just had that huge elephant in the room, which has been an irrelevant football program almost the entirety of that time. I mean, you've had a couple of blips where maybe you were interesting for a little while, but nothing sustained. And we got 3 head coaches. And I mean, you guys know the rap sheet. Okay. I don't have to run that down, but I do feel like if you got at any point the football program into a state that you were really happy with, I mean, dang, what does that picture look like? And hopefully you're getting there. I hope the basketball program doesn't just plummet into oblivion, because that's not going to be easy to process either. Can we not have nice things all at the same time? That's the question I have.
What you don't want is you don't want them to trade places.
Right.
And I've had these conversations with people before. I think Chris Beard came here at the right time, and they got hot at the right time when football wasn't doing well. Okay, it wasn't on stable ground, and just the on the field success just wasn't there. And so what happens is people around here, they want to win. Okay, shocker. Captain Obvious. But some people out there only have so much discretionary income to spend on one of these sports or the other, as far as season tickets or taking their family to. And Tech hoops and Tech football kind of passed each other in the night. And all of a sudden basketball became the thing. That's what I'm going to invest in. That's what I'm not going to miss. I'm indifferent about football a little bit, or I'm not going to get the season tickets this year. And you're starting to kind of watch it all of a sudden maybe change a bit. maybe Joey is taking advantage of the not that he's trying to, but you know what I'm saying. It's that football is now on the uphill tick, and basketball is kind of it's questionable. You're ninth place last year, and so again, because some people just have, like, if I've got so much money and this is the way I choose to spend it. I can't afford to do both. I'm forced to pick. So I think it's kind of interesting, and I think we see that in our neck of the woods as far as just interest level and engagement with fans and questions that are being asked. And don't misunderstand what I'm saying. People still very much care about basketball. I'm just saying, but you kind of started to see it, started to trade places a little bit, and I just hope they fully don't trade places, because you're right. I want them all to be good. I want to have nice things. I want,
Right.
I want everything to be good. I want to be rolling from September to mid-March, man. Make no mistake. And that's why the stock up, the purple teams in the league are the ones that, after, if just with the snapshot, they're the two schools that I think far and away lead this conversation. It's not even close to what you would want to try to be with just the last year, if you're just looking at it at a glance.
Always interesting to follow the ebb and flow as far as ticket demand, or how tough it is to get in the Jones, or how tough it is to get in the USA. And nothing stays the same forever. You're making me think of one of my buddies who bought I think like first or second row season tickets during the Billy Clyde Gillespie era. Pretty fair price for those, kind of a discount sale, if you will. Well, he's still got those tickets all of a sudden when Chris Beard's going to a national championship game. I think he might have been paying his mortgage with those tickets by that point in time. You don't want to bail, all right? Could come back around. You never know. And it might even be a fiscally sound decision for you to remain invested. Stock report, the arrow is pointing upwards for now. We'll see what everybody does with that when you actually get onto, fields, courts of competition, which is just around the corner. We're going to talk about some guys that are going to be on that field of competition coming up dead ahead. I think when you're talking offensive positional groups a season ago, the one I like the most week to week, the one that made the most hay, the one that was making the most chicken soup out of chicken spit was your group of running backs. You lost a really good one in SaRodorick Thompson, but you're keeping a really impactful one in Taj Brooks. He's got some new company. We're going to get to what to expect in 2023 versus what you did in 2022. Coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen once again on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. With Chris, I'm Casey. Let's get to what's happening on the field in 2023 at Jones Stadium. We're going to talk winning at home coming up in just a moment. But first, some of those guys that are going to be contributing to that effort, Chris, we want to get to specifically. I think we spent time this offseason, obviously, talking quarterbacks, talking offensive line, which is probably the focal point of the offseason on that side of the football. And, of course, we talked about your group of wide receivers, but we may have not quite spent as much time talking about your ball carriers. And a season ago, I felt like by far that was the group that was most reliable. They were making more out of scenarios than should have been there to make, and that's partly because of the way that they operate as ball carriers when you're talking about such physical guys like Thompson and Taj Brooks. But that cast is changing a little bit. Clearly, with SaRodorick Thompson no longer in the picture, Taj Brooks will be your lead dog, but there's a couple of other dogs to let off the leash that you'll get to know this season. But Chris, it was a pretty productive year for you last year. You didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher, but between Brooks and Thompson, you put up about 1,300 yards between those two. And of course, we also have to consider some QB impact as far as some rushing impact is concerned. But I'm curious how you're viewing 22 to 23 when it comes to these running backs, because I know there's a lot of potential, but do you think they can replicate or even improve on what they did a season ago?
Yeah, this is the context of this conversation is interesting, because if you're just talking strictly running back position, like the players that will just play that position, and you compare production, or we project what it was this year versus last year, or if we're talking just rushing numbers in general, those are two different conversations. Because I think last year, you really didn't have a third running back. Nehemiah Martinez wasn't really splitting time. I think Cameron Valdez was dinged up most of the year. And so it was really just Taj and Saradrick. And I think you leaned on your quarterbacks more last year because I think the quarterback position in general probably netted just over 400 or close to 450 yards rushing in total, with Tyler Shuck having the most of those.
Yeah.
I think Baron Morton had just under 100, and I think Donovan Smith had close to 150, somewhere like that. But I think in total it was just over, a little over 400, maybe closer to 450. And so, because between Taj and Saradrick, I mean, it was just under 1,400 yards. They were both right there in the 700 yard range. This year, though, like comparing it to last, I do think you've got Taj, you've got Cameron, and then you've got Nehemiah Martinez. I don't know if you will necessarily lean on your quarterbacks as much to run it, to try to keep them healthy. You have one fewer than you did last year. I think that, you've seen both of these guys go through injuries before. Not that you won't run them. You almost have to. This is the game. You can't shy away from it. Short yardage, red zone, different kinds of scenarios kind of call for it. But I go back to that one stat to where you were one of, I think, 20 programs in the country last year that didn't have a running play of 40 yards or more.
Yeah.
And I think that is because, somebody, you have somebody bust off a couple of long runs, it can really skew these numbers, like a couple of 65-yard runs. I mean, there's a bunch of yards wrapped up in just a couple plays. It makes the play caller better. It makes the game easier. It makes everything. But you didn't really have that. And I think that Cameron Valdez could certainly do that. I think that Nehemiah Martinez is capable there. I think he'll be better up front. But I'm gonna say that you end up with more yards from just the running back position than you did last year because of the big play capability. I would especially feel comfortable in saying that if you could add Dre McCray or the Miles Prices into this equation, like on some sort of jet sweep or whatever, because those are going to count as rushing yards. But I would definitely feel that because I think you've got a little more juice this year than you did last. And, again, the schedule's pretty tough this year, but I think I'd probably go with thumbs up on you getting more yards from scrimmage from a running back position than you did last year. But again, totally a guess. These guys have to stay healthy. They have to be very productive. But I'm going to take my chances there with a few more pieces to work with than you had last year.
Yeah, I think the key descriptor you nailed there for me just a second ago, yards from scrimmage. I don't know if I would say you're going to rush for more necessarily, but I think you may get more yards from scrimmage from that group of running backs. There's a little variety there and some versatility. Could they be pass catchers here or there? Possibly. But the explosiveness, clearly you're expecting to tick up a bit within that group in 2023, and that'll be a great thing for Zach Kitley and company if that happens. Another great thing. Let's get to that, winning in Lubbock. But first, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And right now is the perfect time to take your first swing with FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right, just $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line, over-unders, or all points in between, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. Download it today from the App Store or visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And when you're a winner, you're getting paid instantly. Just one of the many reasons why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. And get busy bonus betting with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Another great thing. Let's get to that. Winning in Lubbock. The fan base enjoys it when you win in front of them. Season ticket holders enjoy it when you win in front of them. And last year was a great run in the 806 for Joey McGuire and company. Chris, 6-1 on the season. That one was sure a frustrating one, but nonetheless, big picture wise, it was only one that you dropped there against Baylor. But had some of your most exciting wins of the year as well. Obviously, some opponents you care about beating came to your stadium a season ago and left with an L. But those games were not just wins against opponents you care about beating, but good grief. When you're thinking Houston or Texas or OU, those are some of the all-time white knucklers that I can remember within some recent history. So not only do you win it, but you do it in thrilling ways there in front of the home crowd. And I think it wasn't too long ago, Chris, that we were really asking, when can you restore home field advantage? Because it used to be a really tough place to play whenever teams traveled out to Lubbock. Lost that pretty much entirely over the course of the previous decade. But maybe you rebuilt a little bit of that a season ago. And I hope they can do it again this year. But I don't know that it gets any easier necessarily with some that are coming to your house.
You know, I would say that the most important thing for Joey McGuire when he took over here, and it was more important than anything else, is winning home games. Because everything that you are about or that you stand for, none of it can be attainable without winning the majority of your home games. You know, recruiting to that environment, getting people to buy into that environment, getting donors to be excited about, giving for that environment and facilities and, everything that you think of a college football program, it's solely based on creating the best and playing the best at home, because that's the formula. If you win your home games and you go get some on the road, you're in the thick of whatever conversation you want to be in. That's the way it works. And for way too many years after Mike left, that got away from you a little bit. The magic was gone of sorts, and you just, it wasn't fun to go to anymore. It wasn't like it was almost like, this is so fresh. Like you always leave the stadium if you're a fan, like frustrated. This stuff's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be exciting. You're supposed to love the juice of the environment, and that had just been hit and miss. That you just weren't, because to a lot of people it's a drug. They love that. They love that environment and that the juice that comes with being at a live sporting event. And I think they love the high that you walk out of that stadium with, and everybody's honking the horns in the parking lot, or you're out there sucking down sauce and just kind of celebrating. You feel life is good, life is better, everything smells better, the sun shines a bit brighter, all that stuff. And it's funny you phrase it that way. And last year, because we do remember the one where it just didn't go well. Your quarterbacks didn't play well. Baylor got the best of you. But there were in years past where that was the norm. That's how all the home games went for the most part. And I would take if you could duplicate what you did last year every year going forward, even if there's a stinker in there, I'd probably take it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would. But, let's look at it this year. Oregon, Houston, TCU, Kansas State, and Central Florida. Other than Tarleton State, which I did not mention, I mean, there's 5 of those home games. They could go one way or the other, and it's really not going to surprise anybody. You'll be favored in a lot of those, but not by much. I mean, you'll probably be favored. I mean, Tarleton, yes, for sure. And then Houston, I would say yes, for sure. But if you're favored over Oregon, it's going to be a little, just by a little bit. TCU, I don't know what they'll be at that point, but they've got all kinds of players. They've played you well in years past. This is going to be a one of those swing games for you. Kansas State, it's well documented how we feel about that. Central Florida, you'll be favored there. Again, I don't know what they'll be in early November or what you'll be at that point. You'll be favored there, but I bet it's not by a lot. And so it's a really fun, good rewarding home schedule where you're going to get a lot of credit for winning these games if you're able to do it. And because you've got some good coaches, good rosters, and things like that coming in. And I know that, there's not the quote unquote blue bloods and things like that. But I mean, there's some juice on your schedule for sure.
It's hard to say that your home schedule is more difficult, I guess, without Texas or Oklahoma on it. It's hard to feel that way, but it may be comparable to what it was last season. I don't know, or more difficult. I'm not quite sure the caliber, obviously, of, say, a K-State or a Texas Christian versus a UT or an OU from a season ago or for this season. I think one thing that really makes me think maybe it ticks up, possibly, is just that non-conference edition of Oregon. That's
and we get caught up into these giving Oklahoma and Texas way too much respect at times.
Sure,
we do. I'm as guilty as anybody. Texas won. What did they win last year? 8 games or whatever. Oklahoma won 6. So, I mean, Kansas State won the freaking league, okay?
Right.
And TCU played for the national championship.
I know, those are the two coming, and
That's
thinking,
what I'm
is
saying.
it easier this year?
Yeah, and Oregon is a top 15 team that is regularly in the conversation for Pac-12 title and college football playoffs. So,
okay, Chris, I feel dumb. You're right.
No, but I'm guilty of it too, and it's the perception. But maybe this is a different reality, and not that Kansas State or TCU will be as good or Oregon will be as good as maybe we think. But on paper right now, it's hard to suggest in any way that this one isn't much tougher.
That's true.
Than last year's.
I've come around. I think you're actually correct. It's the people in purple that were really frightening a season ago, and they're coming to your house this year, and you've got your biggest non-conference date at home in quite some time. So you'll have your hands full, but hopefully that's one thing you can sustain is home field success. And I couldn't agree any more with what you were describing there as far as Joey McGuire's attitude. I mean, precious things in college sports, precious things in college football start with a home field success rate and a success rate again against those opponents that your fan base really cares about. Not all 7-5s are created equally, but 7-5s with wins over opponents your fan base really cares about. 7-5s that include a lot of success at home can make you probably feel a little bit better than some other 7-5s of a different variety. But we also know, and we'll talk about it on some upcoming episodes, that if you really want to contend for any kind of hardware in the Big 12 conference, there's that pesky road conversation that's got to change a little bit as far as your success rate away from Jones Stadium. But we'll get to that in some days and weeks to come. Chris, great to be back with you, man. Enjoyed the conversation.
Hey, man, appreciate it. Thanks for listening to us. Keep hope alive and be safe out there.
Thanks for joining us. As always, hope you'll subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. For Chris, I'm Casey. We'll see you next time on Locked On Texas Tech.